All right, so I have cognac and I have, sorry, not the alcohol cognac, right?
It's
K-O-N.
KONJAC.
Correct. Okay, cognac. Okay, it's a
Yeah,
plant. And then I
yeah.
have alchemy rice. Wow. Wow, this morning definitely not wasted, man. I learned something. I learned two new things already.
Yeah. I just checked. The rice is available at fair price.
Oh, great. And alchemy. Alchemy rice.
Lazada, fair price.
Yeah, I buy all
Fiber for rice.
my cognac from online from Fair Price.
Ah, great.
Hmm.
Well, that means we all have to join the member then to get the points. A lot of rebates there.
Yeah, you must link your card to it as well.
Yeah. Oh, it's a plant-based fiber.
Yeah.
Oh, and I got this alchemy rice as well. Alchemy fiber for rice. Wee, nice. Oh, but on the pricier end, man, I have to confess.
Yeah. I'm sure all these healthy stuff are all pricier. All those protein and carbs, low carb stuff are all pricey.
So Ruben, just the sequence of events. We're gonna start with Patrick first.
Oh,
But
so
Ruben, the opening, right?
I will do an introduction. I'll just basically share what is report about. Why are we doing this? And then after that, I will hand it over to. I will invite Patrick to give us a opening speech, just to help us to take us into this launch proper. And then after Patrick finishes his sharing, his speech, and then I will then take it back, and then I will introduce Nissan, and the stage is yours. And then we'll end off with the Q&A.
I will not say too much about the report. I will just allude to the fact that there's a lot of potential and opportunities in this space. As usual, I think people are not surprised. People just want to know the magnitude of it.
No, but it's very important that we have someone like you to help us launch it and to be part of it here also, because you represent talent. You represent what the efforts that the government is doing to support talent. So it's really very apt and very nice to have you here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Like I said, particularly these days, I mean, where the financial sector space is one big space where there are still a high demand for people and talent. So it's we're trying to help segue some of the excess manpower from other sectors over here. Not an easy task for mid-careers. I think it's possible, because after my interactions with many of the startups, I think it's not just, you just don't just need deep tech talent, you also need those with domain expertise. So that's the key.
Correct. Yeah.
Which the other thing Nissan will uncover for us is more of how to retain these people, because I also noticed that talents, the good talents in fintech are very mobile.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's always high turnover.
Yeah, and it was interesting that in terms of the report, in terms of people join and leave for exactly the same reason. So they want opportunities to grow and develop, but actually they're not getting it. And I think that's the challenge with startup cultures, is that whilst it's all interesting to go there from the beginning, how do you retain them and sustain that talent? Because the startups are not geared up, where they don't have the infrastructure and the machinery around all the great stuff around talent building. So they will get the talent in the short term, but to sustain a career. So fintech for me is like, to be in a fintech, it's a short-term opportunity just to do something interesting. And then I will leave and possibly go and do something else. So it's like fintechs need to think about, they really need to think about how do they actually retain talent and build that machinery, because it's not about the technology solution.
So Nissan, on the interesting note, before we start, I just I want to put a point out there as well. Again, I think we discussed that during some of our meetings as well. How much, because you raised very, very good points, and how far are these learnings that we have transferable to other adjacent industry? Because Patrick definitely speaks more beyond just fintech itself as well.
Yeah.
But we have very good findings here, and I'm just wondering, based on your experience, how much of this are actually relevant to the adjacent industries? or even the larger industries? Yeah.
Actually, when we look at like some of the skills adjacencies, we did a recent analysis where we proved that actually you can take a financial accountant and reskill them into a data scientist. Because there's a number of adjacent skill sets that a financial accountant has in terms of problem solving, deep analytical skill sets, and as well as reporting. And actually you can build some of their skills to build some of the data science skills associated with that. It takes time, but it certainly can, you certainly can get there. So I think when you look broader at the scope of what the skill sets are required, there's an element of some of the technical skills that you need, but for fintechs to be successful, they need a broader range of skills. It's not just the deep technical skill sets. I always say if you can solve with if then else, which is the basics of computer science, you'll be able to code in many languages and we can reskill you in many, many things. And I think if you have that analytical mindset, reskilling becomes a lot more easier to do. And I think that's, because the technologies are advancing so quickly, 2 years time, there'll be a whole, now everybody's talking about the metaverse engineers, right? That's the new job title that will come. And it will be invented, and we don't know what that metaverse engineer will actually do. But in 2 years' time, we'll be reinventing data scientists to be metaverse, or full stack engineers to be metaverse engineers, because there's probably a good skills adjacency. So I think it's nothing new. It's just that you'd have to just divert your skill set a little bit. So I think it certainly can be done. When we showed a client the skills adjacency of how you can reinvent that, because the traditional accounting role is actually dying because they're becoming lots of automation around it. And we proved to them they got careers elsewhere. It was actually quite insightful for that client.
Interesting bit, because I would, especially the last part when you say that accounting is dying, because I do know that a lot of big fours and a lot of companies now are actually craving for talent. There's a shortage there right now.
It's because the manual and transactional reconciliation work associated with accounting, AI is taking over that. So the accountant's role has to be reinvented. And I always joke and say accountants need to start having personalities, because they have to develop a lot of other skill sets way beyond just the traditional things that they do.
Right. Sorry, I'm mindful of time. Thanks, Abi. I look, this conversation is something that we can keep going on. In fact, I think we are really like a panel already starting on something already. But let's bring us back to this important message today. So can we just safely start right now, or do we have to wait for more people? I think we can start.
You can start right now if you want.
Okay, great. All right then. Without further ado, and the session is recorded already, right? Okay, you're recording. Okay, good. Then let's do that. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your time to take this time to join us today. And just before we start, I just want to give everyone a quick background as to why we are doing this and what exactly is this session or this report all about then. For those who joined us earlier, you have already heard us talking about talent. And talent is really a key intangible asset for many companies in today's and future economy, and especially so in fintech companies. Talent in the fintech space are a very, very interesting breed because the solutions they represent are breaking new grounds. And these new grounds are broken in markets that are traditionally B2B, B2C, and it's really bringing so much changes that sometimes even consumers do not know how to respond to that. And these talents work in incredibly fast pace, and they're always adapting to changes because of the startup setting. And as a result, many people are drawn into this space. And if I would bring it back maybe 10, 15 years ago, there's no such thing as a fintech talent. And so people who make up the talents who make up in this space are from adjacent industries, or alluded to our earlier conversation, from various different industries and so on and so forth. So while they're all drawn in, but the experience that they gain in these companies also make them very attractive and mobile, and not only to competitors, but also to other adjacent industry later on. So if all these things that I've shared earlier, the talent is so important as I made it out to be, then there should be an effort to understand this key asset better. So for the past 3 years, SFA have been working with various partners to unravel the mystery of what attributes to attracting and retaining talent, particularly in fintech setting. And for this year, we are very, very happy to be working with Accenture to deliver this edition. So I'm very sure that this report will be definitely worth your time. And now, I would like to invite our good friend Patrick to share with us an opening, to help us to kick off this whole session in the right fashion. And just to give you everyone a quick introduction, Patrick is no stranger. He is the Assistant Secretary General of NTUC, as well as Member of Parliament of Pioneer SMC. He is also the Executive Secretary of Banking and Financial Services Union. Look, Patrick wears many, many hats. I can go on and on and describe all the good work that he has done. But I think more importantly, I feel that on a personal note, I feel that Patrick is actually a very suitable person to help us launch this report today, to take us through this session today, because he is a leader who believes in talent. And in his course of work, and in fact, for the past many years of his mission, is always really about bringing out talent, helping talent, moving talent, and position talent to drive the future. So I think really there's no better person to take us through this session today. And I'd like to then hand it over to Patrick to share a few words with us.
Yeah, thanks, Ruben, and a very good morning to everyone who's tuning in. Yeah, I know we are in the midst of Singapore FinTech Festival, and well, it's a lot of exciting programs, particularly in the Talent Pavilion. So I on behalf of all of us who are involved in one way or another, directly or indirectly, with the Talent Pavilion, please do join us for the sessions that are going to come up, not just yesterday, today, the rest of today, and as well as the rest of this week. But more importantly, this morning we are gathered here because of this great piece, which particularly powered by Singapore FinTech Association. So I would like to thank President Exco Shadab and team, as well as Ruben, who has just come on board SFA, and all of us are joining hands together to really look at how we can fuel the entire FinTech ecosystem here in Singapore, and well, in many ways now across the region and globally. And I'm glad to be here today because like what Ruben mentioned, myself, not just from the Banking and Financial Services Union, but also from the labor movement, we are very into ensuring that our workforce stays really relevant and resilient, ready with the new skills, relevant to the new jobs, and of course, resilient to the many curveballs and changes that are happening. And in particular, this morning, we're going to launch the FinTech Talent Report 2021. And it has been a really untiring journey by the Singapore FinTech Association. And this year, later you'll hear more. I won't steal the thunder from Nissan and the Accenture team. You'll hear the report and the presentation on it. And I'm sure you'll get to see a copy of it. If not, I will try to share the PDF copy on my LinkedIn. But otherwise, they're having had a chance to have a glimpse at the report. It basically further emphasized some of the beliefs that we have and some of the forecasts and predictions that we have, not just in the labor movement, but across the labor market space. As all of you may be aware, there are quite a few major announcements, minus the one last evening. Of course, the last couple of weeks were announcements regards to the labor market, from the labor market third quarter release to the National Wages Council's guidelines, to the PME Task Force report, and of course, many other pronouncements that came in the last couple of weeks. So it has been an exciting past couple of weeks, in the run-up to this entire week where we are powering the Singapore FinTech Festival. I think just as in any other quarters, I realized after following this space very, very closely, the first quarter advance, or should I say the third quarter advanced labor market report, very consistent in the past two quarters, the first and second, is that there are few industries that are really powering the economy, not just in the last few quarters, but in the last couple of years. And I think I'm particularly bullish of these few sectors. They all mostly belong to the modern services sector, i.e. The financial services sector, the infocom and technology sector, as well as the professional services sector. So these three are really powering our entire economy. And I must say, partly also fueled by the fact that these three sectors are very, very digitalized, not just digitized, but very digitalized and really very digitally transformed. Some a bit more ahead of the curve, some really riding the wave. So in fact, in this pandemic, and as we move into endemic, I think these sectors continue to power our economy and really are making a big presence across the globe and in the region. And the third quarter labor market report just flashed out further, highlighted this fact that the financial services, which includes the fintech sector and the fintech space, will be one which will power in terms of not just the GDP growth, not just investments, but also jobs. And not just normal jobs, but really quality and meaningful jobs for everyone. And therefore, today's FinTech Talent Report, I don't think will come as a surprise. There continues to be lots of FinTech investments. I think MAS has made quite a number of announcements, including Singapore FinTech Association. And we know FinTech investment has more than double. I think it's been tripled in more ways than one. If you heard about it through Supendu, who heads up the FinTech, the space in MAS, and he was sharing how he has grown so tremendously and exponentially. And this also means that there will be more jobs, in a way, a bigger war on talent. So later you'll hear more from Nissan and some of the key findings from this year's report. But I thought just to highlight a few points for those of you who are tuning in and looking at exploring this space. Well, some of you may think, oh, fintech must be a sector which really requires very, very deep tech talent. I beg to differ. I think in many of the startups that I've interacted with and many of the established fintech names, if you notice, especially when they're scaling, when they're growing, it's not just deep tech talent. I think they need both deep tech talent as well as people with domain expertise. Why do I say domain expertise? Because if you're selling to someone, for example, in the fast-moving consumer goods sector, if you have prior experience in sales and marketing in FMCG, you may be a very relevant, staff to be on board on the bench to help the company drive some of the sales and business development. Likewise, if you are particularly familiar with certain regions could be ASEAN, in Asia, or across the globe, you can be a great force to help that startup, that company to penetrate into new markets and new possibilities. So not to worry, we are not just looking for deep tech talent. Yes, there are deep tech talents and lots of it in the fintech space, but also people with domain expertise so that we can break new ground and penetrate new markets. And I can't emphasize more the need for reskilling and skilling and training, something very, very important. And remember, for those of you who are owners of startups and micro SMEs and really in this space and operating this space, it's going to be a learning continuum, meaning that you don't just train the people to start off your job, but it's going to be a continuum. Why do I say that? Not just the fact that the half-life of skills is shortening, but also the fact that you really need to ensure your workforce, particularly in the fintech space, stays engaged. And of course, the challenge of retaining them. Nissan will share more about that shortly. But you really need to ensure that your staff and the members of your team continue to stay engaged and be on the learning curve, riding the wave and riding the various changes. And I'm glad to really share that besides Singapore FinTech Association, there's strong support from Monetary Authority of Singapore, as well as the Institute of Banking and Finance. I think I can't emphasize more. I sit on the IBF Council. I know the amount of resources, energies, and really put into supporting the fintech space, and particularly also SFA, as well as the really building up the next wave of talent, or should I say green shoots in the financial sector. So on that note, again, a big congratulations to the Singapore FinTech Association, and of course and a big thank you to Accenture for powering and doing this jointly with SFA. And SFA being also one of the affiliates of our labor movement, I'm as we're awfully proud that SFA has been on this journey year after year after year, and I can't wait for Nissan to share the details in this presentation. So thank you very much, and congrats to the team.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you so much. Now, if there's anything I'd like to extract from Patrick's sharing, two things. First one, we are all in the right space. So for those who are not in this space yet, if you'd like to be part of the sector that prompts and be the Singapore growth engine, come and join us. And I think that's the beauty of having, and that I'll look to the second point, which is what Patrick has mentioned earlier as well, that training is a lifelong continuum. And if I were to bring it back to what Talent Pavilion really represents, so what you are hearing from us today is about a report launch, but at the same time, there's a lot of training courses, a lot of job opportunities, a lot of chances to engage founders and startups. So take advantage of this occasion that we have, take advantage of this whole event that we have under Talent Pavilion, to really be part of it. But right now, most important thing is let us bring to you why FinTech and how to really attract talents. And before I hand it over to Nissan, I just want to give a big shout out to MAS and to our partner in Sue, who has been working with us tirelessly to guide us in this report as well. So while it's a SFA report, but we are very happy to have various partners who are working with us to make sure that the report is very well represented and the report is also very reflective of the current need that we have. Now, without further ado, let me hand it over to Nissan. Let me just give you a quick sharing too as well. Let me introduce Mr. Nissan Gobanda to you. He is the managing director who is leading the talent and organization department, or I'll say practice that looks after the whole Southeast Asia. Nissan is someone who is a very fervent practitioner who really believes in talent, and he has been spending more than 2 decades, or in fact, I think about 25 years, really trying to understand what makes talent tick. So this report is not just only about what we have found out through our research, qualitative and quantitative, but also with the inputs of all this wealth of experience that we have through a leader like Nissan. So I think I can't think of a better person to share this report with us other than Nissan. So Nissan, over to you.
Great. Good morning, everyone. And Ruben, thank you very much for that introduction. I'm very, very humbled by that. And Patrick, thank you very much for the opening remarks. I mean, I think the one thing in hearing your voice, it's great to hear the passion around people coming up, so which is absolutely fantastic. People remain at the very core of everything that we do. And I think it's these talented individuals that come to on a day-to-day basis who work within our fintech industry that actually really make the difference. I think we all kind of know the answer to the report. And very, very importantly, actually is, what do we do about it? So I do want to spend more time in terms of the actions and the things that organizations can actually take to address some of the challenges. As was mentioned before by Ruben, this has really been a joint effort between SFA, MAS, and ourselves, Accenture, in terms of co-creating the report, conducting the research, and crafting the right response and the recommendations. So thank you very much to all the contributors, very much for your time. We had over 100 participants in our survey, over 100 fintechs that participated. In addition to that, we also had various interviews that were actually conducted. So let's just move on to the next slide, just in terms of the overall context. So I think, in terms of what we set ourselves to do, I think we really try to understand what is the key themes facing the fintech industry, identifying opportunities to grow and develop, and looking for ways in which companies can actually take this into the next phase. I think this year's particular report we had a great response rate to the survey. In addition to that, the number of interviews that we conducted was more than ever before. And also we complemented this with a number of different secondary research in addition to this. So the overall report is actually quite comprehensive. I'm going to walk you through in terms of the key themes that we've uncovered. And I'm not going to go into detail on all of them. There's about 8 of them that I'm going to deep dive into, but I will touch on overall. So I think, Patrick mentioned in his opening statement in terms of the low labor report, in terms of the growing demand. And there's absolutely a growing demand, and fintech talent continues to outpace local supply as our competition to attract job-ready workforce accelerates. And this gap is really unlikely to close in the short term, despite all the efforts that we're all making from the various financial services sector firms, technology firms, as well as our educational institutes. And I'll go into that into a little bit more detail. The second key theme, and Patrick alluded to this, is that the combination of skill sets that we require, it's not just technical skill sets. We require a holistic focus on what we see as 4 distinct talent profiles that are required for the fintech industry. And we're going to go into that into a little bit more detail. Point number 3 is around the urgent need for know-how. There is an accelerating demand for talent with specialized skill sets across various job families in financial services, as well as technology. So there's some emerging technology, as well as a combination of the functional skill set that is required. The 4th key theme around local roots, global reach. We have found that with remote working, driven further by the pandemic, has led to really an opportunity to gain access to a much more broader specialized skill set and affordable skill sets beyond the borders of Singapore. The 5th key theme is around a mindset fix. There really is an opportunity to enhance the entrepreneurial mindset of our fintechs, which includes risk-taking, adaptability, and agility, in addition to the current efforts to develop technical skills. In addition, with great opportunities comes great hires. And the ability to solve real-world problems with a greater autonomy plays a major role in attracting employees to work at a fintech organization. And we'll go through that one in a little bit more detail later on. Number 7, the power of connections. The number 1 source of talent for fintech companies is employee referrals, where founders and employees leverage their personal networks to identify hires with the right skill sets and fit. The next point is around a tale of 2 business models. And we find in the fintech industry, there's a B2C and a B2B model. B2C companies attract more talent as their business and the impact on end users can be much more easily understood and observable. Whereas B2B companies seem to operate a lot more behind the scenes, and there's a lot more need for more specialized skill sets. And their hiring pool comes from a smaller availability in the marketplace. So there is a differential in terms of B2C versus B2B fintechs. Point number 9, everything rises and falls with leadership. The background, capabilities, and connections of the founders or investors really does influence the level of confidence and potential that employees have in the organization. Number 10, the undervalued investment. There is an opportunity to significantly improve spend on learning and development per employee, whilst development primarily happens on the job. Some gaps can only be addressed effectively with formal learning programs and just-in-time learning support. And we'll go through the learning spend in a little bit more detail. Point number 11, the quest for holistic development. Now, learning and development efforts tend to focus more on building technical skills like development, implementation, and some of the coding skills. In addition, we require business development, sales, and marketing to be included as part of those holistic development. Top behavioral skills being developed are problem solving and creative thinking. Whilst these skills are vital, other skills families still need to be emphasized. Point number 12, it's an employee's market at the moment. With a growing skills shortage in the fintech talent, employees often leave more for lucrative jobs. And this further inflates the cost of labor in Singapore. Number 13, the opportunity paradox. Whilst potential candidates look to join fintech companies for opportunities to develop and enhance their careers, surprisingly, they also leave for exactly the same reasons, indicating they may not be getting the necessary growth and development opportunities. And finally, a total package. More can be done to address employee well-being. We find that there's a significant focus on rewards, but total rewards in terms of more holistic benefits, which goes beyond financial needs to be included. And these include dimensions of employability, mental health, and physical needs, and so on. So I'm now going to deep dive into 8 specific areas. And the first one we're going to deep dive on is in terms of the demand for talent. So you'll see that the demand for fintech talent continues to outpace the local supply. Now, this gap is unlikely to close in the short term, despite all the efforts that everyone's making. When we surveyed, 80% of the surveyed companies are really bullish about really accelerated growth in business opportunities. So fintechs definitely are seeing significant growth. In terms of the number of investment deals that our fintechs have been doing in the first half of this year alone, far exceeded what has been done before. 61% of the surveyed companies have been around for 5 years or less, indicating a fairly nascent industry, and this growth will continue. When we do look at the job vacancy rates, both in financial services as well as in the technology sectors, this is on the increase. So the job vacancy rate on average is between 3.7 for financial services and 7.7 for technology, whereas the industry average across Singapore seems to be around 2%. Now, with this growing vacancy rate, we also have the headcount that is going to be more than double in the next 1 to 2 years. 73% of surveyed companies expect their current headcount to be growing again more than double. So we've got an existing situation of a number of vacancies as well as a doubling of the headcount. And when we translated this, it translates into approximately between 3,700 and 3,800 a workforce that will be required in the next 1 to 2 years. So there is a significant supply issue that we have. And the key challenge is, how do we actually address this? So when we look at the types of talent that are actually required in the fintech industry, we found that when we looked at the top skills that are being hired in the last year, as well as what is forecasted in the next 1 to 2 years, it's not just the technical skills. And Patrick called this out in the very beginning. Yes, development and implementation sort of skills, more technical skills are required, but there's an increased number in terms of business development, sales and marketing that is required. So you'll start to see that there's a growing need to be able to develop a new set of skill sets that are required. So fintech is not just about the deep technical skill sets. Now, we translated this into something quite interesting in terms of what is required for the fintech industry. So if we move on to the next slide, we see 4 distinct talent profiles that will be very relevant for the fintech industry. The first skill set profile that we see is what we call the technology wizards. And this is really a group of people to really drive technology innovation. They need to have the strong technical skill sets to be able to design, build, and execute. And they need to be able to do the right levels of integration for the deployment. The second competency that we see is a job family around what we call commercial evangelists. And this is the growing need. And this is where where many of our fintechs, when we surveyed, we found that this is actually one of the big gaps. The ability to commercialize what you've developed. So it's not just about building something interesting, but how do you take it to market and how do you make sure that your business is able to sustain and grow from that? The third key aspect is around operations champions. And this is the strong industrialized factory that you need in the back office or in some of your support functions to make sure that the entire organization can actually work. So this is really the infrastructure that's required. And finally, the corporate drivers. Our traditional functions seen in support services of HR, finance, etc., seem to be lacking in many of our fintechs. And one of the ones that we want to highlight is specifically around people development, because there's a correlation in terms of why people leave fintechs is because of the lack of career development and people development opportunities that they see. So when we look at talent profiles, fintechs need to have a balance across all talent profiles and making sure that you have talent in the right segments and you're able to give the right focus and development. So as you're starting to build out your future talent profile, making sure that you have a fine balance in terms of all those different talent profiles. If you can just move on to the next slide, Sherman. So I think we've all realized that with COVID, in the post-pandemic world, as we move into the endemic world, the work and the way in which we execute work can be quite different. And actually, many of our fintechs, the significant majority that we surveyed, were already utilizing more than 50% of their workforce out of Singapore. So outside of Singapore, they were already utilizing an existing workforce. So remote working is really going to aid fintechs to be able to get the right types of skill sets. But the trick is making sure that you're able to develop the right talent in-house within Singapore, and think about the types of talent that you will require outside of the borders. So having a holistic development strategy in terms of skill sets is absolutely required. Let's move on to the next slide. So from an attraction perspective, where are fintechs getting their talent? So surprise, surprise, employee referral seems to be the #1 channel for leveraging talent. So personal connections are the ones that fintechs really rely on to be able to hire talent. So whilst the other traditional channels still remain, we find that employee referrals remains the absolute highest and will still continue to grow. The standard job portal still will remain as a channel, but you will find that the ones that we would have thought of that attract fintech talent, such as online hackathons, the gig economy, or even career fairs, surprisingly, they were a lot lower than what we anticipated. Let's talk about learning. So once you get people into the organization, how do you make sure that you continuously grow and develop that talent? Now, even though 50% of the survey respondents cited that the increased need for learning and development existed for their employees, 69% of those that we surveyed spend less than $1,000 per year per employee on learning and development. So spending less than $1,000 per individual on learning and development is far below the norm. So this is less than the average learning and development spend per employee, which the global average is much more than $1,000. And globally, many large organizations invest significantly more. The much larger organizations and much larger tech firms invest anything between $2,500 to $5,000 per annum on learning and development per employee. Now, it is, whilst it's understood that, in the early stages, fintech companies would rather use their funds on more immediate needs, such as innovation or operations to fuel the business growth, there would be a need to make sure that learning and development spend to grow the right in-house skills, as well as being able to offer opportunities for growth and development, still remain. So this remains something of a challenge for fintechs to make sure that we can address the skill gaps, but also providing enough learning and development opportunities. So whilst fintech companies start to develop specific technical and behavioral skills, they cannot neglect other skill families. And we've outlined a holistic approach in terms of the types of skills that will be required. So the top technical skills that fintechs are building are in line with deep technology skill sets, as well as business around sales and marketing and business development. Whilst some of the less priority technical skills seems to be around people development, general management, and business finance. The top behavioral skills that are being focused include problem solving and decision making. However, we find that some interesting and more required behavioral skills, such as thinking in terms of transdisciplinary thinking, collaboration skills, communication, effective collaboration, self-management, customer orientation, as well as change management and learning agility, seems to be lacking. And those are some of the skill sets that we will profess would require a stronger focus on in order to drive out more holistic development. So once we've got people into organizations and we provide them with the right career development opportunities, how do we make sure that we retain them? So when we look at why people join, opportunities for growth and development remains the number one reason why employees join a fintechs. The opportunity to work with interesting people remains the second priority. And then third is about the nature of the work. But when we ask people why they leave fintechs, the number one reason, again, seems to be about opportunities for career development and enhancement. Number two seems to be around people. And number three seems to be around work. So it's interesting that, whilst we have the continued need to be able to people join fintech for particular reasons, they're leaving for exactly the same reasons. Our survey also found that the average tenure remains, 51% of employees stay in fintechs for 2 years or less. So that's 51% of people stay in the fintechs for 2 years or less, and 12% stay for greater than 5 years. So while fintechs might have a strong employee value proposition that attracts and sources talent, our findings also suggest that the same companies are falling short in sustaining the value proposition once employees join, and not living to the development and growth promises needed to retain the best talent. The next section is around employee well-being. So when we look at the holistic nature in terms of what are sort of benefits that fintechs are actually providing, the stock standard annual leave, sick leave, etc. features. But when it comes to other benefits, such as more holistic lifestyle benefits, further education benefits, more intensive insurance and more holistic leave, such as parental leave, not all fintechs seem to be providing that. So there is an opportunity for a lot more of the holistic benefits to be provided by fintechs. So we do find that there needs to be much more of a significant commitment to providing additional benefits, such as care packages, there's further allowances for organizational support in terms of employee assistance programs, training, community service, etc. So there's a significant opportunity to provide a lot more holistic benefits. In terms of some of the practices that fintechs have employed during the COVID period, included things such as mandatory leave, but not all of them provided mental wellness initiatives or flexible benefits initiatives or employee assistance programs. We found that virtual events seems to be a very, very common practice. However, training seems to be on the decline, as well as providing more holistic allowances for financial support, as well as making sure that people are comfortable in their work environment in terms of bringing their remote working to their homes and providing for facilities for that support. So there is an opportunity for a much more holistic way in which fintechs can actually address their employee well-being. And we suggest a holistic coverage across emotional and mental support, relational support in terms of how they connect with each other, physical support in terms of things that you can provide for employees, financial support, as well as purposeful support in terms of linking back to the purpose of the organization, the purpose of the community, and things that you can actually give back. So those are just some of the initial findings. And the key question is, so where to from here? And let me go through each one in a little bit more detail. So we've outlined 5 key things that we believe that fintechs should actually undertake in order to address a much more holistic talent challenge. And this is all about how do you build a sustainable fintech workforce? A fintech workforce where it's not just for today, but it's going to be for everlasting. A fintech organization where you can have lower attrition rates. A fintech where you can provide career opportunities for growth and development with a clear career path. The first thing we want to talk about is around clarity of purpose. So clarity of purpose is all about your ability to be able to articulate and reinforce why you exist. What is the purpose of your fintech, and making sure that every single one of your employees clearly understands why we exist, and what our core values are, and what do we want to achieve, and how does that translate into our business objectives. Culture is a very important aspect. Many of our fintechs do not necessarily spend time in terms of defining what is that unique culture that they want to create. What is the ways of working? Why do we want to make sure, how do we drive through the levels of agility, change, and adaptability within our fintech? So defining the organization culture is going to be quite important. And then the paradox that we talked about in terms of people join for the opportunities, while they also leave for the lack of opportunities. So figuring out how do you actually drive that through. We found that organizations in our secondary research, organizations with high performing cultures have 4 times the revenue growth, 20%, 21% greater profitability, and a 10% increase in customer ratings. And I think one of the key elements that we would want to emphasize in terms of for fintechs is, one, define your clarity of purpose of why you exist, and make sure that every single one of your employees clearly understands that. And secondly, making sure that you have a clear definition of the unique culture that you want to create. The second aspect is around a value proposition. Now, a compelling value proposition gives you the ability to be able to say who you are and how you're perceived in the marketplace. A value proposition is about the give and gets. What can you offer your employees to attract them? And what do you want from them in return? So fintechs really need to have a holistic approach to their employee value proposition, which includes, things like opportunities, the promise of growth, your career enhancement, the ability to provide stability, a holistic way in which well-being can be addressed. Secondly, around the organization, making sure that the reputation of the organization linked to the clear purpose is quite there. The leadership, making sure that the leadership is actually quite visible, they're quite visible in the marketplace. The nature of the work, like I said before, there's 4 talent profiles, making sure that people have the ability to be able to rotate in the organization and not just have deep technical careers. And rewards needs to be holistic. So a strong EVP needs to be compelling, it needs to be relevant, it needs to be unique, it needs to be tangible. And these are elements that a fintech really needs to think about in terms of what is that compelling value proposition. The third element is about a captivating employee experience. So our Accenture research found that 64% of a person's potential, which is the ability to utilize their skills and strengths at work, is determined by whether they feel better off. And better off in terms of 6 dimensions: financial, emotional and mental, relational, physical, purposeful, and employable. And in line with the theme of a total package, employees need to be what we call net better off, creating a much more memorable experience that can be created from your onboarding to your benefits, your rewards and recognition, your well-being, your learning and development, your performance management. And this is about the end-to-end employee experience that one needs to have for every single one of your employees in your fintech. So this is not just about producing great technology and not just about a deep technical career, but it's about an employee experience that you can have within the organization. The next aspect is around capability for enhancement. So in line with the undervalued investment theme, fintech companies need to build skills as their new currency. So whilst you've attracted people for their skill sets, learning never stops. Learning can happen on the go, anytime, all the time. And build skills for capabilities where you need to upskill, develop, and empower existing talent. Build capabilities for those that are easy to build, and think about those sort of skills and capabilities that you can recruit from outside that are not easy to build, and they maybe more available in other in other geographies. So really think holistically in terms of that overall talent strategy. Think about how you may want to leverage your partners and the ecosystems to be able to build up skill sets. Think about how you're going to use digital tool sets to be able to increase the productivity of employees so that you can eliminate some of the manual and transactional work for people so that you can free them up to do interesting work. And like I said, learning happens in a formal environment. It happens from learning from others. It happens from learning on the job. And this needs to be approached holistically. And the final component from a recommendations perspective is around connecting with the ecosystem. And to close the talent gap, fintech companies really need to engage the gig workforce and build a talent marketplace for fintechs. So your ecosystem and your ecosystem partners are extremely important. Building your partnerships, whether it's upstream or downstream with educational institutions, leveraging of incubation programs, leveraging of some of your larger customers in a B2B environment, tapping into the various grants and government support that is provided. In fact, our survey reveals that only 39% of those companies surveyed leveraged the digital acceleration grant from MAS, and only 20% accessed the FSTI grants. Those that did access the grants saw numerous benefits from productivity to headcount growth. So connecting into the ecosystem to be able to build talent is going to be absolutely key. This you can't do on your own. So utilize the partnerships and utilize the resources that have been provided. I think finally, to sum it all together, one defining trait of fintechs is that they are highly entrepreneurial, nimble, and agile. And as organizations evolve and as the landscape continues to change, companies need to remain vigilant, keep experimenting, and adapt your talent practices and respond quickly and appropriately to attract, develop, and retain employees for the long term. This is a long-term game. It's not just about attracting talent for now, but it's about pulling in all the practices to be able to drive through and make sure that your workforce is sustainable. And hence, we hope that this gives you some perspectives in terms of how to build a sustainable fintech workforce. Ruben, I'll hand over back to you.
Thank you very much, Nissan. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how about you guys, but for me, I really enjoyed what Nissan just shared earlier. While there are a lot of things that are seemingly familiar and it looks like something that we already know, but I have to highlight the fact that some of the things that was being re-emphasized again, put it into that perspective that Nissan has shared overarching with so many other teams, gave a very holistic picture. So I'll give you an example. So many times we hear about, training is important. We hear about career development being as important. But after Nissan put it in that holistic way, it helps one to understand how everything comes together, and with the sustainability wheel, that you really see how everything falls into place. Which one thing I want to call out is that what underpins the whole wheel is engagement. Because there will always be a need to engage, and the engagement has to happen across at all levels, and that kind of engagement has to be institutionalized so that you can actually then get the constant feedback that would drive the 5 segments that Nissan has mentioned earlier at the wheel. And a couple more points that I thought was very interesting that I just want to highlight as well is that Nissan mentioned that there are 14 elements, of that this report that's covering. One thing that was caught my eye was the rise and fall of leadership. Just like how we always talk about when it comes to fundraising, it's always the founder and the entrepreneur. People are investing, especially at pre-seed investing, and the founder. Even when it comes to joining, even when it comes to joining a company, that leader plays a very big part. So I think this is one area that I want to call out to all my listeners today. If you are a founder, you're an entrepreneur, you're a hiring manager, do remember that you represent the company, you represent the department, you represent what your firm stands for. One more thing and just one more area that I also want to call out that I thought was very interesting was the the rise and fall of the two business model, because if I were just to throw the spanner right now, there's one more that we call B2B2C, so that again complicates the whole space, which is very unique to fintech. So I think it is with that in mind that when it comes to hiring, it's going to be very challenging. Now I can go on and on. I just want to emphasize certain things that Nissan has brought about, and I really appreciate the very last slide that Nissan took some time on, because it really brings a closure to this whole report. Now, in view of time, I do have one question that I would like to invite both Patrick and Nissan to take a step at. And I thought that this is a point that both Patrick and Nissan highlighted in their opening speech as well as the sharing. But on a personal level, I would like to hear more from you. We talk a lot about training. We talk a lot about spending on people. In a lot of my startups, a lot of my members, they are still at burning. They are still at burn rate. So, and they will have spent good money hiring talent to bring them in the first place. So given that potentially there won't be a lot of budget left, and you highlighted certain key numbers that 1,000 up to 2,500 for big, larger companies. So maybe I'll invite both Patrick and Nissan to share with us, what can my members who are smaller do about something like that? Maybe I'll invite Patrick first.
Yeah, thanks, Ruben. And yes, I know many of the members, particularly the startups, micro SMEs are looking at, do I have a budget for this? You're really burning already. And well, the good news is that there's a 3-piece meal for you. I call it a 3-piece meal. Why do I say a 3-piece meal? Firstly, at a national level, there's already quite strong support. We are quite fortunate in Singapore because I've interacted with many of the neighboring countries as well as across the globe. I think we have a very strong training support ecosystem here in Singapore through the entire Skills Future movement. And there's very, very strong support at the national level, particularly for training and skills upgrading. So I think there's no shortage nationally. I mean, some of us, I just went for a Skills Future course not too long ago, relevant to the FinTech space. Was a FinTech Foundation program 2 years ago, and then last year also in the financial sector space to get a better understanding and grasp. And that was almost fully funded. Well, partly because I'm an older worker, or should I say a mature worker, so I get a bit of an enhanced funding. But otherwise, that's the national framework. But I think sectorally, we are very fortunate. I think SFA is working very, very closely hand in glove with the Institute of Banking and Finance and MAS. And therefore, in the financial sector, because of very strong financial backing from MAS and IBF, we are able to do a lot of very, very customized training and support at a sectoral level, and even more granular in the fintech space, whether it's talent that's already in this space, as well as bringing talent into this space, and of course those in adjacent sectors wanting to come and get a better knowledge of this space. So actually, this is second piece meal. As a sector, as an entire fintech ecosystem, there's further support. And finally, well, in a small way, the labor movement, as you know, Singapore FinTech Association is affiliated to the labor movement, NTUC and the BFSU, Banking and Financial Services Union, when I come from as well. We actually have support at the individual level for workers in general, particularly the professionals, managers, executives, because as part of this membership, which we have tied up with SFA, you are actually entitled to unlimited credits. Well, why I say unlimited? It's unlike the Skills Future credit where you get one tranche and then it lasts you for 5 years and that's it. But we actually renew every year, $250 to the tune of $500 for those who need a bit more support on an annual basis. So it's topped up every year. So you can make full use of that program. That UTAP Union Training Assistance Program, this funding also funds some of the SFA programs as well. So I think it's just to further send across a message to everyone that we are quite in a fortunate position where there's no lack of funds to support training at the individual level as well as at the company employer level. So I hope all the startups, micro SMEs out there leverage on some of these. And I reach out to Ruben, and Ruben will reach out to the BFSU, and then we have various funding supports. But we're trying to form company training committees in the labor movement. We have already formed about 750 of them across different sectors, across different sizes of companies, not just the big, large local enterprises or MNCs, but actually many of the micro SMEs. So actually there's a lot of avenue for you to tap on some of the training to enhance your employee engagement, enhance your employee capability and competency, at the same time also enhance your employee value proposition. Yeah.
So I just want to add, one point to what Patrick mentioned. And I mean, I think, in addition to, taking advantage of all the grants and financial assistance that is on the table, and there's a lot that is available for individuals. One of the things that's very, very important is actually for leaders of fintechs to drive through a learning culture. Because what we find is that there is availability of funding, but are people taking advantage of it? And as leaders of fintechs, you need to drive through and tell employees, you have to learn everywhere, anytime, all the time. Because we always say 70% of your learning happens on the job. 20% of your learning is through mentors and role models, and 10% of the learning happens through, I send you on a training course. So that learning culture needs to be driven top down. I mean, some simple practical things that fintechs can actually do. Learning Fridays, a half a day on a Friday, actually you stop work and it's all about learning from each other. Whether you have small sessions and bring in an external speaker, etc. That's all learning. And I think creating that learning culture, those communities of practice, encouraging your people to be part of broader groups and part of networks, I think that's where you need to think holistically about learning, because it's not just about, I need to send you on a training course.
Thanks, Patrick. That's Nissan. I mean, I just want to highlight what both of you just shared. Patrick, thanks for sharing that, because you make me feel very fortunate that I'm in Singapore. So there'll be so much support the government is sharing with us. And on this one's point, that I alluded back to one of the points that you raised during your sharing, that there was a segment that you talk about positioning people in different roles as job rotation. So I think that's one thing that sometimes we tend to overlook, and that could be something very useful to give people a new sense of learning, acquiring new skills. And in fact, it is with that you'll be able to pick up a more horizontal, deep skills along the way. Now, in view of time, I would really love to continue this any further, but look, guys, thank you so much for your time today. There was one stat that Nissan called earlier, and I do hope that the next year edition, we will see this improve, which is 51% in the fintech company talents who stay for less than 2 years. Let's fingers crossed. Hopefully next time when we look at the report again, it will be way less than 51%. And we are seeing more people staying longer in fintech with a sense of ownership and purpose. All right. And so with that in mind, I just want to thank everyone once again. I would like to thank MAS. I'd like to thank BSFU and NTUC, as well as Essential and Nissan, our great partner who have been working with us on this report. Last but not least, this report will be distributed to all the available channels. So do feel free to come to our website, NTU's website, as well as even Essential website as well, and they will be made available. Any last words to Patrick and Nissan before we end?
No, I just want to congratulate the team, and I hope everyone who is tuning in grab yourself a copy of the report so that you can reinforce what Nissan shared earlier, concisely and succinctly, but read it from front to back. It's quite a good reading. Thanks.
Great. I just want to say thank you very much, everyone, for joining in, and look forward to the discussion. And thank you, Patrick, for the great words, and thanks, Ruben, for you and your team, as well as Sue for all the support in producing the reports.
That's right. Over to you, Sue, as well. Would like to share a word with us as well?
I just want to thank Essential and SFA for making the launch success of this report, or the study that has gone into that. Those are really valuable observations. I am very sure this will lead to a more sustainable fintech talent ecosystem. Thank you both.
Thank you very much. Now, with that, I'd like to conclude this session. And can I also invite everyone to continue to stay on Talent Pavilion? There's a lot of things going on right here. So please make the best out of it. And there's a lot of training program here as well. So all the best. Thank you, everyone. See you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.